so much, Tom. Hi, everybody. I'm Claire Handley. I'm on the board of the Branford Land Trust, and I'm standing in for Julie Wagner, our president, who will be here shortly. So I have her speaking notes in front of me. I'm not going to pretend to be Julie, so you may be getting a slightly abbreviated version of this welcome, but here goes. First of all, I am very grateful to acknowledge the support of Ascent Bank, formerly known as Guildford Savings Bank, and the Branford Community Foundation for their support of events like this through a grant, which they have given us every year, and which makes it possible for us to host these wonderful speakers and to be able to bring all of this great information to the community. So big thanks to Ascent and to the Community Foundation. I'm going to read next our land acknowledgement, and after that I'm going to introduce you to the wonderful Tom and tell you a little bit about him before he, in turn, delivers this evening's talk. So the Branford Land Trust acknowledges the people who have called the lands we conserve home. We honor the Totoket and Menunketuk bands of the Quinnipiac people who were dispossessed of these lands. We pay respect to those who are no longer here, and we celebrate the continuing and future presence of Indigenous people in this region. We are grateful for their stewardship of the land, water, plants, and animals over thousands of years. We also recognize other people, past, present, and future, with connections to this land. Those who were enslaved and brought here against their will, those who came for a better life, and still others who flee danger and seek refuge. We vow to protect the land in perpetuity, to foster access to nature for all people, and to help heal our human relationship with the earth. Thank you for listening to that. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Tom Cleveland. Tom is a long-time friend and volunteer with the Branford Land Trust, over 30 years, or would that be dating you a little bit?
No, I think you're right. I think I joined in 93, 94.
That's incredible. So a long, long life of service and friendship with the Land Trust, and so we're always delighted when we get to work with Tom. And over the years, he has been a vice president. I don't think I knew that. That's correct. Property steward. Julie's note here says Land Trust House Apartment.
Yeah.
Did you
I cheap rent in the Land Trust house.
Down on
I
School Street.
insisted they raise the rent. It was so low. It was embarrassing.
What a friend. Unbelievable. Services as well, incredible. Some of you will also know Tom because every year he takes part in our annual animal tracking workshops, which we hold over at Lake Saltonstall. We had to cancel them this year for the unfortunate problem of too much snow. Terrible problem to have. But we look forward to carrying on with those. And in addition, many of you may know Tom's beautiful work in creating and selling what Julie described as caribou, but which I have thought of as reindeer. And every time I go to somebody's house, I see another one of Tom's creations, outside or inside, and they're truly beautiful. So I hope you get to see one next holiday season, or have a chat with him after this. And later in Tom's life, he became a commercial banker and financial executive in New York, and eventually moved back to the Connecticut shoreline as the Director of Sustainability with the Stony Creek Quarry. And he was also the driving force behind the Land Trust's efforts to install the fish ladder at the Supply Pond Preserve, which is what we're going to be hearing about tonight. So please, a very warm welcome to Tom Cleveland. Thank you.
Really great introduction. So I just want to say right at the outset that I haven't used any AI at all to help me with this presentation. That may be a good thing or a bad thing, you will see. But it's all human, which is, I think, what the Land Trust is really wonderful. aspect of the land trust. I love the human quality, and I so appreciate bringing the land acknowledgement into our collective life here. As you'll see, I grew up in Native America quite a bit. So, anyway, so the purpose of our gathering together today is I am Tom Cleveland, and here's a picture of the fish ladder. First of all, how many people have been to the fish ladder, or has anyone not been to the fish ladder? Oh, good. Oh, well, that's important. I need to know that so I can drone on a little longer. Well, anyways, this is and my good wife Wendy said, tell them what a fish ladder is. Okay, well, a fish ladder is this thing that helps fish get over a dam if they could swim up. And our customers are river herring. They're not very good swimmers. They're not like salmon or trout. They don't jump well. So they couldn't even make it over this probably. Or get up to, if they got up here, there's no way they'd go over the top. So a fish ladder helps migratory fish move up a river into freshwater habitat above a dam. We have an awful lot of dams on the eastern seaboard. We have got over 4,000 dams just in Connecticut alone. So this is the fish ladder. It's 17 feet from the level of water here to the level of water up there. This is the dam that was built 1899, Jane Gooley confirms. And it may have originally been built out of wood. And behind it is our four big ponds, and another 4 miles of riverine habitat that our customers, the alewives and herring, blueback herring go up. Here's the view looking down from the dam. Here's the entrance structure here. There's a run of I think it's 10, 12 feet or something, and then a resting pool. This goes up 8 feet. This goes up, is flat, and then there's another 9 feet up to the and just so that you get oriented on Branford is the center of the universe. And what goes on in Branford doesn't stay in Branford. Branford is a really important, we're sitting on the edge of, the Atlantic basin, and there are migratory animals and fishes that crisscross up and down north to south. And they come in contact with our river herring, which are born here in Branford. And then I'll be talking more about this whole area is kind of the ocean habitat for these anadromous fish that spawn in the fresh and live in the salt. Just like salmon, river herring, alewives, and blueback herring. They feed out here for 3 or 4 years till they're sexually mature, and then they'll run each year. They'll come back into Long Island Sound and then run up into the freshwater habitat. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I'm not loud enough. The freshwater habitat that is above that dam. And I'm trying to remember, this is slide number 5. So I want to come back to that. So there we are. We're in the middle of Long Island Sound. It's another sort of it's a beautiful body of water that's kind of it's special in a lot of ways. It's not quite as salty as the outside. So here's the migratory route that fish take, and it goes all the way up to Cedar Lake. Lindsley Lake might be better known. It's right off Twin Lake Road, and basically fish come in to the Branford Harbor. They smell parts per million. They can smell that special Branford essence. Yeah, like we all know, there's something in the water here in Branford that makes all of us more human. Yeah. But anyway, so the fish, they can smell, and they pick up, they're 4 years old, they're looking for more and more concentrations of that Branford smell that as the spring rains push the fresh water into the sound. They can smell it off Long Island, and boom, 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 boom. Right now, they're starting to move through. They're moving now in the Queech Brook, in the fish ladder, as we speak. And the ospreys are coming back from Venezuela and the Caribbean, knowing that those river herring are here in Long Island Sound. So it's like 3 miles coming up the river, under the highway. You take a left off of the Branford River onto Queech Brook. And Queech Brook is what got dammed up to make the supply ponds. And then if they make it up there over the fishway into supply pond, then they go another 3 miles and they'll get to Lindsley Lake and then to Cedar Lake. And they know, we've done, the scientists from Yale have done tests on sediments in Lindsley Lake. And there's a large, I want to say rotifer, but it's a small animal that lives in the water column, but it's very big and fat. It's like a chubby cow. It does not move quickly. And if you've got alewives in that water column, they eat them all. And so the absence of these things is what proves that for thousands of years, alewives have been living in Lindsley Lake, and the sediments reflect that this is certain range, and hopefully it'll get up, the fish will get up to Cedar Lake. We don't have them in Cedar Lake. Here's the fish ladder at the southern terminus of this is the first supply pond. The next one is pretty silted in. This one's 17 acres. This guy's 17 acres. This one's 7. So it's about 20 plus acres of habitat there. And then, as I said, it's another 3 miles up to Lindsley Lake, 20 acres. Cedar Lake, 20 acres. Lindsley Lake, I think, is 100 feet deep, though, in parts. So this is, and somebody else might know, it's Queech Brook until a little past the supply ponds, and then it turns into Pisgah Brook, because this is New England, and everybody has to name it themselves, and so it's a little confusing, but I think it's Pisgah Brook runs all the way into Lindsley and then into Cedar. And here's what the fish ladder looked like in April of '07. How am I doing? This is what alewives look like in the when they're in. People told Michael Torelli and old Branford people told me that the runs of these herring would come up to the foot of that dam, even in the 50s and the 60s, and people would, catch them in buckets and big nets and get a pickup load full of fish. It wasn't happening in 2002 when we first got approached by the DEP. The land trust got approached by the DEP, and they asked us, would the land trust like to sponsor the effort to build a fish ladder? It said, Steve Gephardt, who some of you may know, is a legendary Connecticut civil servant and fisheries biologist at DEP. He built probably 30 or 40 of the 60 fish ladders in Connecticut. He's a force of nature. He came to the land trust and he said, it'll be easy. He said, don't worry about the money. We'll find the money. You only need 80,000. Well, we easily spent 200,000. But he's a great salesman. Mariah Storm, who, as I know, was known colloquially as the River Queen, she was head of the River Committee. We had a Branford River Committee in the Land Trust. And this committee took on the work of building the fish ladder, and Mariah asked me, would I be interested in helping out? And I said, sure. I said, sure, because I grew up on the Yukon River in Alaska. And here, this is a fish camp on the Yukon River, about 300 miles up from the Bering Sea, and only a quarter, the river is 1,400 miles long. It's probably a mile wide here. But, and all this red stuff, that's all salmon. That's all salmon. So when I grew up in a culture where you could feel the abundance of migratory fish. They would come in late June, and every family would catch 4,000 or 5,000 fish to feed themselves, to feed the dogs. Everybody had dog sleds in those days. This is in the 50s and the 60s. I lived in Holokachuk, and a village that's not far from this fish camp. We had a fish camp too. We ate lots of migratory fish. So migratory fish had a special warmth in my heart. Here's a guy. This is a typical king salmon. These fish, it's not uncommon to have a 30-pound fish. And you can't buy or think of better tasting, very fatty fat, just really organic fish. And that's the king. Sad to say, on the Yukon River today, you haven't been able to catch these fish for 7 years. They have closed the fishery because they're just not coming back. Like our alewives, they think they're getting intercepted by, the commercial fishing. It may be climate change. The life cycle of any of these migratory fish is really complicated. It's really hard to find where the little guys are going, how the little guys are doing. It's hard to figure out what they eat, if their food supply is doing well. But the subject of my talk today is really more about alewives and blueback herring, the river herring. This is a run up in Daramuscata River in Maine. But this is what Queech Brook, this is what Branford River looked like, 200 years ago. In late March, when everybody was starving, you've used up all your corn, your squash is rotted, there are no more deer, your dry fish is out, and all of a sudden, you wake up one morning and you walk across the river because there's so many darn fish right there, and life is good, life is great. So it's a funny little fish. Not many people eat them, even in Maine, where the runs are much more vigorous than in southern Connecticut. They're schooling fish. They live 7 or 8 years at max. They come out of the ponds. They're only in the fall of their birth year. They'll be like 2 or 3 inches long, just little guys, and they'll come down the fish ladder. We open it up so that they don't go over the spillway and get caught in the rocks. And then they grow up for 4 years, usually, off there on the continental shelf in Long Island Sound, south of Cape Cod, down to Jersey, back up, and they move. And then when they hit sexual maturity, they look for that Branford essence and follow it up. So there are 2 kinds of herring. I mean, God help you if you can really tell the difference between the 2 of them. If it's raining and the fish are jumping around, but the alewife likes smaller, likes quieter water. They love ponds and lakes, quiet water, whereas the blueback are more akin to they'll spawn in the Connecticut River in a cove or a backwater in the Connecticut River, or in the Queech Brook, in the Pisgah Brook, even in the where the water is moving along at a good pace. They'll spawn there. There's all of these are this guy's a shad. That's where you get shad roe. The Connecticut River still has a good run of shad, a couple 100,000 shad, and 3 or 4 families still go out at night with gill nets and float the gill nets down the Connecticut River to catch 100 shad that they can fillet up, sell the shad roe. This one is the blueback. This is the alewife. This is something called a hickory shad. I think they're the same as gizzard shad. And then this is Atlantic herring. They're the same size, and they, to the untutored eye, they look a lot alike. They do have, apparently, they've got a toothy mouth, which the alewives and the bluebacks don't. And we'll get into the problematic nature is that there's a whole commercial fishery that goes after these Atlantic herring. And the river herring, because they so much like the Atlantic herring, they school right with them. They probably eat pretty much the same stuff. And when the commercial guys go out and put out nets around a school of what they think is Atlantic herring, bam, they could just pick up the entire class of 2024 from Queech Brook. So Any questions so far? Anybody like the presentation so far? Exactly. When? How many?
I have a question.
Thank God. I'm so thirsty.
I hike around there all the time, and for quite a few years now, there's been a terrible drought. How has that affected these guys?
She asked, there's been a terrible drought in the supply button. How does it affect the alewives? If they're if it's dry in the spring or low waters, as Steve Gephardt would say, then the fish don't spawn as readily. They don't find the rivers. They might not all get back to Queech Brook. They may be coming down the Sound and just take a right at Brides Brook or Connecticut River. You know, if the water temperature, I think I'm right in saying, if the water temperature hits 56 degrees, almost all of those alewives will start spawning wherever they are. Yes.
I have a question about the fish ladder. What I don't understand, do you pump water up that so they swim up, or how do they get up the ladder?
Oh, I haven't shown how the fish ladder is made yet, but no, good question. No, the water is the water in the supply pond is 17 feet above the water in the brook.
Right.
And so when you open it up at the top, it shoots through this aluminum columns like this, 3 sides open on the top, you know. And so the water comes down that. There are these baffles. It hits the baffle and creates huge turbulence inside that column. And so the water is not moving. The water is only moving 20% as fast as it would if it didn't have these baffles. And because it's all turbulent, these lazy, unathletic, sympathetic but unathletic, herring can swim up in that turbulent column of water. So it's no pumping needed. It's just the hydraulic pressure going down from the higher elevation of the water in the pond.
So they swim against the current.
They do swim, and they look for current. So, I'll,
A question.
yes.
About what percentage of the fish make it up the ladder? 'Cause they don't know the ladder from nature. There aren't any signs saying.
I don't know what percentage make it, if they swim into the foot of the dam. I think that almost all of them are able to get into our fish ladder, into that column of water, and swim up the first 8 feet of elevation. Then there's a 10-foot resting pool where there's current coming through it, but it's flat, and it's not difficult to just rest. And then they shoot for another 9 feet of elevation straight up in that turbulent water. So the only statistics I know are that out of 100 fish that make it through the ladder, about 60 of them will spawn, and then 100 of them will spawn, hopefully, and then 60 of them, after they've spawned, they'll come back down the ladder and go back out to Long Island Sound and spend another year fattening up and growing eggs or sperm and getting ready for the next year. Or they'll come up and do it again, and until they are exhausted or they're eaten or or they're caught by the commercial purse seiners. And they're midwater trawlers. Midwater trawlers are the bad guys. But Anyway, so here's the life cycle of the herring. I'm sort of going over this already. You know, they go from the salt up into the fresh, and they try to get up to Lindsley Pond or even Cedar Lake. Here's a graphic that if you go to the fish ladder, you'll see this explicative educational signage that sort of tells you, you know, in the spring the fish run up the river, they get in the ponds, they spawn, the babies feed in the ponds, all those weeds in the supply pond, great habitat, you know, hide from the bass, and then in the summer they get a little bigger and they avoid these guys, and then in the fall when the rains come, the high water in the fall flushes them out. Now, if there's low water in the fall, well, these guys will make a living in those same lakes. They'll sit tight, and then maybe there'll be high water in the spring, and the fishway will be open in the spring. If it's not open, they don't care. They'll go right over the spillway and flop around on the rocks, and 48% will die. You know, but that's good for the record. So, any questions about the life cycle? The range is pretty broad for both alewives and blueback herring. You know, have that same range. There apparently are three big genetic stocks. You know, there's a northern stock, there's a southern New England, and then there's like a mid-Atlantic. You know, in rough justice, you know, there are probably, you know, a lot of subdivisions there. But I only know a little bit about the southern New England stock, which is not doing well. You know, it's 5%, it's 10% of its even, you know, mid 20th century level of population, and that I'll talk about. But I think the two big reasons that we've identified, or that, you know, people above my pay grade have, is that, can you hear me? Yeah. Is that there's habitat loss because of those dams, and B, there's ocean interception because of the commercial fishing pressure on a couple of different fisheries that we'll tell you about. And the reason they're important is just to give you order of magnitude. If we had in the Queech Brook, if we had a pre-colonial, you know, pre-dam population of 500,000 herring coming in Queech Brook, that's like 10 to 15 tractor trailers loaded with fish. Right? It's a humongous amount of biomass. In fact, Steve Gippard says that you can go into the soil, which, you know, within half a mile, a quarter mile from the watershed of the Queech Brook, and you can test the soil, and you can find isotopes that are only found in the ocean. And that's because there's so many fish come in that everything eats them, they poop them out, they flop around, they die. But the chemical signature of those archaic, you know, fish runs are still there in our hills. You know, it's only been a couple hundred years. That's nothing for trees. Yes, sir.
Are there other areas in Connecticut that need fish ladders that don't have them for whatever reason?
Yes, yeah, there are a lot of them, and you know, I'll get on. Why worry about fish? But yes, there are only about 60 fish ladders, and there are those 4,000 dams, and the only two solutions: A, put a fish ladder; B, tear down the dam. The best solution: tear down the dam. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that dam. Every fishery biologist will tell you that. And we can talk about Ward's Dam, Ward's Pond on the Branford River in that respect. But everybody eats the alewives. Again, Gephardt says they're the field mice of the ocean. And they used to be an archetypal. They're part of our history here. They make up our soil. They make up our trees. They measured like how much of the egg matter of cormorants. 50% of the physical eggs were made up of stuff that came from alewives. How they figured that, I have not a clue. You can see the osprey are back because the alewives are in. And so here's a graphic. I mean, yeah, there's the 4,000 registered dams in Connecticut. There are probably another 2,000 dams that are too small that support DEP, which is underfunded, 20% fewer staff than they used to have. They can't go out and check the dams, so they can't even identify them. And then here are the paltry few fish ladders that we've got. Here are existing alewife runs. This is data from 2021. I don't think it's changed perceptibly. But all those blue lines, those are big river systems. And they used to be chock full of river herring. So you can see that these runs or these what is it? It's an eighth. It's close to 10%. I mean, humans could do more, but it's wicked expensive to take down a dam. We took down a little dam in Pond Lily on the West River in New England. I think it cost $300,000. The dam was this high. I mean, admittedly, it was probably 50, 100 feet long, but it wasn't big. To take down Ward's Dam, maybe a couple hundred, $300,000 if you're lucky. The fish ladder that you see there, that cost $200,000 in 2006. Which was a while. So it's really expensive, and there's resistance because people don't realize that there is plenty of warm water habitat for ducks and for bluegills and perch. And there are precious few free-running rivers that will support migratory fish, migratory birds, migratory areas. So now I'll get into a little bit, and what I said, one of the big problems is the fellow who's really taken over from Steve Gephardt at DEP. He's a great young guy, Kevin Job, and Kevin is on fire. He's just like Steve Gephardt. There's been a DNA transplant. He's very passionate about about alewives and river, about wild fish in general. But he thinks he's pretty sure it's the bycatch, it's the ocean intercept that happens to our little southern New England river herring gene pool. They get whacked in between Cape Cod, Long Island, New Jersey, and Connecticut as either these mid-water trawlers. This is football fields. This is huge, and they've got sonar that can just, they can tell how many bones are missing on a fin. It's our ability to locate and capture fish is way beyond. I mean, we could wipe out. We've got the technology to wipe them out. These not to totally demonize, commercial fishermen. These fish, Atlantic herring, are primarily used in the lobster bait business. Lobstermen like them better than, and there may be lobstermen here in this room. They don't rot as fast as many. They last longer in the traps. So anyways, this is one problem. This is a dated slide, but this is sort of an amalgam of river herring counts, probably at the Holyoke Dam, up at Turner's Falls. But you can see that in the 80s, 90s, it was way better than it was in the early aughts, and it's apparently worse today. I don't have the only good data I have is on Supply Pond Dam, and you see that there in the early, when first we opened, we got like 3,000 fish. That was like great, and that was a class of 06. In 2010, that class of fish hit sexual maturity. They came back to Branford, and the fish counter broke. Our electronic computer broke. So the counts were wild. Like we had 300,048 fish. It was complete BS. But you could tell there were a lot of fish. There were dead fish everywhere. The place smelled. It stunk. There were gangs of cormorants, a dozen in a line, swooping. They get in a line. They're not stupid. They get in a line and they all dive under at the same time, and they school the fish and they push them in towards each other and then all grab them. And it's a very clever bird, but you could just see all these osprey, all the fisher birds eating the big one. How big? Who knows? We don't know. But and then it mopes along. We were hoping that by now we'd have a 400,000 run fish run like Bride's Brook up in Rogers Lake. Bride's Brook runs out of Rocky Neck Park. It comes off the beach there, runs up into Rogers Lake. They regularly have 400,000 alewives in that run. And the lake it's probably twice as big as those 60 acres of our lakes. So we should be able to get up a couple 100,000 fish if the guys, we think, if they just stopped commercial fishing. That's not going to happen. And maybe that's not even the answer. We just don't know. The science is really tricky. I've sat in on the two regulatory groups that they have, anybody can dial in on their calls. And it is obtuse. And it goes on for 3 or 4 hours. And These are young, smart people working as hard as they can to figure all this stuff out. The Moyanis fish ladder is another great run. But you can see it got real peaky here. The blue is alewives, the orange is blueback herring. But you're talking about, this is, I think they've got 20 acres of pond back there. And they've got 60, 70,000 fish last year. And they've had, almost 150,000 at times. Natural variability in populations, we were talking earlier about caribou and reindeer. I mean, caribou will do that. Caribou, get up at 50,000 and then, 2 years later they're down at like 20. What happened to those 30,000 caribou? God knows, it could have been a bad storm. Could have been running on thin ice. You never know. Could have been reading the wrong books. So here's a mid-water trawler. I mean, these boats are, this is an investment. This is a big deal. These guys can stay out for, weeks at a time. They've got 20,000 cubic feet. They can fill full of fish and ice and pump water and they've got internal cooling systems, and it's a formidable group. They need to be respected. They've made a big investment, and they provide a real service to the who amongst us doesn't like lobster? The fish are good lobster bait. This is like an old. Back in 100 years ago, 500 years ago, there were sneaky French and Spanish and Belgian sailors all over the Grand Banks, catching fish, mostly cod. But we're lucky. We have. Here's a good. This pink is where the Atlantic herring are caught, and you can see right here these the guys from the midwater trawlers. Their home base is up in Rockland and in New Bedford, and they'll come down. They'll fish all this area anytime, and they're ready to go. This is a really high-tech business. But we think that these areas here, which is where the southern Connecticut river herring feed, and they know this because as things become transistorized, you can now catch a blueback herring, slit open its belly, slide in a little transistor tracer that has an antenna on it, and as they swim, there's a network of acoustic, electronic, sensing devices that bing, 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 bing. They know where your little herring AB 1235 went, and so they mass up all of the tracks, and damn, they know where those fish are. So people are getting, but this is in the last 5 years, which is no time for a regulator. Wow. I'm on page 37 of 59. Any questions? No. There was something I was going to say about this slide. So they're doing a neat kind of heat map where they know where the Atlantic herring are at different times of the year. They know where the Atlantic mackerel are. That's another fishery. I love smoked mackerel. I love mackerel. And guys who catch them are wonderful, but when they catch the Atlantic mackerel, they catch an awful lot of river herring and shad. And they're allowed 5 million fish in a normal year. They can catch 5 million fish as bycatch without anybody complaining. So it's right in here that the bycatch seems to happen. But sure, it's not all happening out in the ocean, but it seems as though it is. And what Kevin, the guy from DEP says, Kevin Jobs, is he says that in late 23, in 2024 and 2025, there were real closures on the herring and the mackerel fisheries right here in this little area here, and lo and behold, our fish counter goes from 500 fish to 4,000 fish in 24, and then 23,000 fish in 25. It's totally coincidental, it correlates to the time that these fisheries were severely limited in the commercial sector. Kevin says that there's a real struggle. There's always a real struggle between the commercial guys and the fishery biologists, the people who are advocating on behalf of herring. Maybe public pressure will help. I don't know. We'll have to see. But there are so many other. Yes, sir, David.
So with these commercial guys, so with the bycatch, is it wasted or are they selling that too?
Remember the slide back there where we're looking at the different kinds of herring. They're wicked. Look at this. I mean, that looks a lot like this, and you get paid $32 an hour to go out as an observer on your big 118-foot Providian with a crew of 10 big tough guys at night in a storm. Yeah, you don't want to be on their bad side. That's how, that's sort of the way the data is collected. You have on-board observers who are paid close to not quite enough for the dangerous, complex technical work that they have to do to separate this herring from that herring. But to answer your question, they just sell it. They sell the whole thing. They estimate how many metric tons of river herring did we pick up on trip number 12, and they log it in. And whether they fudge it, nobody knows. It's quite it's tough to know. I mean, that's the nitty-gritty of it. So here's a little bit of a history of building the fish ladder. I'm 74 years old pretty soon, and going back 20 plus years, it was really a delight to remember old friends, many who are not with us now. There was a great guy, Peter Borgemeister, who many of you might know, and he said to me immortal words where I said, God, Peter, it's so expensive. We're just, he says, well, they said, Tom, don't worry about the money. Tom. And I said, well, it's like, we're going to have to get all this rock and, this stuff, this is going to cost money, Peter. He says, Tom, get the people walking right up to it. Make them walk right on the fish ladder. It doesn't matter how much it costs. Peter died at 94 years old, 2013 or something. He was a legend. Oh God, now where am I? Where am I? We're starting back here. Anyway, so we started a committee in September of 2002. We hired an engineer right away. I think we fired the engineer pretty soon thereafter, hired another one, finalized the design. I mean, it went on and on. You know, you look at this, it took literally 3 years to get the permits, raise the money, talk to the people, do all the human stuff. And then we signed a contract end of August, and the guy was done by the middle of November. You know, it's just like, boom, done. And it was fun. This is where we had to raise money from, you know, beg, borrow, steal, like 8 different funding sources, you know. Town of Branford, you know, I got $4,500, you know, please give us more. And it was, but right after Labor Day, we hired a great guy, Richard Pinder. It was him and his 21 years old son named Richard Pinder Jr., who very soon thereafter had a Richard Pinder III, you know, while he was building, and it was just 3 guys really, and they did it all. But it's dicey work, you know. You're cutting into a dam, and DEP takes dams wicked seriously. Never buy a property with a dam, right, Lindsay? They're very expensive. They're more expensive than children. So first thing we did was we rolled in with excavators and generators and big stone saws and whacked out a piece of the dam under close supervision by the engineer, whose license was on the line. Made a road across the brook. We de-watered. We drained the pond of like 5 feet of water. That was popular. And it blew out all of the roots underneath this. I think it's a hickory tree. Eventually fell in, and we pushed it over one day in the construction process. Anyway, had to build a sophisticated cement box up at the top so that this is where the computer goes. There's wires that go through here into the physical counter, and then your aluminum columns, your steep pass units go down there like that. And here's building the ramp. The fish ladder is going to come right up here. It sits on a big, deep bed of gravel. There's no water in this stream for about a week and a half, as I recall. We were nervous because downstream there's a great couple of beds of freshwater mussels. They're not. Those are really not having a good time as water gets less and less clean. Mussels are super sensitive indicators, and we hustled through this part of the process as fast as we could to get water back on top of those guys. And this is these are the pieces of the fish ladder itself. You can see in there the veins that I was talking about that create the turbulence that makes the water slow enough so that the fish can swim through it. This is a great guy from the quarry, Rick McGrath, who he and Rick Atkinson are the epitome of like Greek gods. You know, they can lift cars. So that's I think, yeah, here's the sort of the schematic. You know, the entrance is a cast concrete preformed thing that you just drop into the bed. Then there's a aluminum. You bolt these aluminum things together. Then there's the resting pool. Then you run it up to the top of the dam like that. And this whole thing was made up in Damariscotta, Maine, by a funny little company whose main business was installing big, commercial soda serving places where you can go and get, orange, Coke, but they were expert aluminum welders and had a side gig doing this very tricky aluminum welding. $25,000, I think it cost for all of this aluminum. The cost roughly broke out to $120,000 for the construction contract to Pinder, $50,000 to our engineer for permitting and doing the design. That was Nathan L. Jacobson Associates, Howard Fromer. You ever get a chance to work with either of these cats? They're fabulous. And then with $30,000 for the fish ladders and trucking. So that boom, there's $200,000. And this is what we make the fish swim through those tubes. And there's a wire that comes from a battery that sets up an electric current in each tube. And as a fish goes through that tube, it changes the conductivity of the water. I think this is true. Wendy, correct me. And it makes it count in the computer. So boom. Of course, if you stick your arm in there, boom, it counts. So the tricky part is not letting weeds and stuff get in there, because that does, after a while, it's just PVC pipe with PVC pipe in the middle and a guy who knows how to build it for your app. Yes, ma'am.
Go through one of those pipes at a time.
One at a time, I bet. Yeah. And if you're a big sea-run brown trout that's 20 pounds, you won't fit through. I'm almost done, I think. Here's a computer. This was 25 years ago. It was notoriously unreliable. They did little windows, you could hardly see it if the sun was out. There was an automobile battery that provided the power. It was a joke. But it has stood the test of time. And then Peter Borgmeister got them to fit this grating on top so that little kids didn't fall in. Because if they fell in and the water's rushing down, it's curtains. You don't want to get stuck in that channel. Terrible tragedy. We had a big snapping turtle, this big, got stuck in that channel and drowned. Yeah. And you don't want to take it apart and pull that thing out. It's like, very odoriferous. And there's the entrance structure, that I said. And this is where Bob Baker's bridge, right, Bob? Where's Bob? Bob made a bridge, I think in 1982, with 2 telephone poles. And I think it's these days. And then in 1984, there was a huge flood, and they snapped just like that. It was tragic. But now, good Rich Shannon, who runs the, I forget his new name, but the Parks and Open Space Committee, he's built another beautiful bridge there. There's a view of the, and that's what it looks like today. That's what it looks like if you're on top of it. You can't ever see any fish in it. The place to look for fish is right there. There's a little eddy there. They like to hide underneath the foam. And the fish coming in, your question about how do they know? How do we know they get up? The design of this is very important. You see all this is active water here. The fish are really attracted to active water. This is what really gets them excited. They hit this, these are 4 blocks of Stony Creek granite, each of them 8 tons, sunk in together to make, I think it's 25 feet of dam right there. So you swim up, you run into the dam, you go over here, and then there's water rushing out of here. And you go, wow, water, rushing water, I'm in, let's go. And up the alewives take off. But they'll sit there, they'll wait, often at high tide, they'll wait for a quantum mass of them and for darkness to fall. They like to run at night a little more than they do in the day because it's probably safer, you know. I think. These are old slides. And this is the end. These are 3rd graders. They saw the first fish inside the fish ladder that anybody had ever seen, right? Because the fish had gotten up into that resting pool, and these 3rd graders saw, and that's the best picture I have. So anyways, that's the story of the Branford Fish Ladder. We're having a celebration of the 20th anniversary on April 25th, 10 to noon. About we'll have a couple of speakers. Steve Gephardt will be there to speak, and the famous Kevin Job from DEP, maybe Josh Brooks. Everybody's got to have a really short speech, except for Steve. He's retired. And I promise I won't speak very long if I do. And then we might have a fife and drum corps. We haven't figured out that. And then we're going to have a march around the supply ponds with your best like fish flag or fish hats. You know, hopefully we'll get some kids and we'll have a blast. So, and we'll have mild refreshments.
I think some fish-themed refreshments possibly. Right?
Oh, yeah, Swedish fish. Right, with little red gummies.
So folks, keep an eye out on our website and in the press for more information about the actual 20th anniversary celebration, which will be at the supply ponds in time for our little friends to have begun their way up the ladder. That's the 25th of April at 10 a.m. at the supply ponds.
You probably all check the Branford Land Trust TikTok page.
Yeah, would you like to run our TikTok page for us? So I think let's say a big thank you to Tom, and then we will take some more questions. We have got about 20 minutes until we want to close out of here. So maybe just do a quick
Thank you.
A lot of science, a lot of attention to detail, all went into that project. So amazing to see. So yeah, over to the floor. I see Jane in the front, and then somebody at the back.
Tom, the ongoing maintenance, or say yearly maintenance, what might there be cost
Great question. It's all borne by the DEP. They open it up, they close it, they run the whole thing. They'll send, bright young people out to take it apart, clean it all. If there's wood that goes down in it, or turtles, but all the maintenance is borne by them. The town of Branford technically owns that fish ladder. I don't know if there's any agreements, like legal agreements between the town and the DEP, but the DEP they maintain it, which is great. Because it takes a lot of, they're the ones who know when to open it. They open it up in the fall. They're hoping to have sea-run brown trout go up. There is no fish counter in the fall. And opening it up also will allow the young of the year to go out, or any straggler, post-spawn alewives too. Yes, ma'am.
My understanding is they're going to be redoing the bridge at Supply Pond, going from the one parking lot to the other parking lot.
Yes.
April, is it? I thought it was April. Will that affect their ability to make it easier for them to go through to different ponds? Because
Yeah, I don't know. The question was, they're redoing the bridge between the two ponds, and I'm sure they're taking fish passage into account. So I bet you it will make it easier in some respect, but they'll make sure that fish can go through that. It may impact our parade, now that I think of it. Let's see. Way in the back, way back.
So
Sure.
what can people in the room do as individuals, Branford residents, to promote fish passage and fisheries?
I don't know. It's such a diffuse, group. You can support the DEP, which is really
Save the sound.
or Save the Sound. There are, Save the Sound. You can give money to Save the Sound. They have done a lot of the fish passage work in the last 10 years.
I can also add, if you go to Save the Sound and just sign up to be notified, the only reason that there was a moratorium on that fishery is that groups like Save the Sound, we pulled together a lot of different groups in the Long Island Sound area. Anyway, long story short, it used to be at these meetings, the only people that showed up were commercial fishing guys. That's all that happened until 10 years ago. Now, there are people like you who are sending in comments and actually letting those commissions know that we need to protect these fish out in the open water. And that makes all the difference. So that open water fishery really is affected by people's voices. I can tell you that there was a moratorium that was passed, and it unfortunately got overturned by the courts, but there were 500 to 700 individuals who called and made comments. These people were never used to getting phone calls, right? They're not elected officials. So when there's 500, 700 people calling and emailing, it makes a tremendous difference. Suddenly they're hearing from regular people who care about regular fish instead of just the commercial.
Yeah, so that was Kurt Johnson there, who used to be president of Save the Sound, and Kurt Save the Sound. And Save the Sound is one of those organizations that the state of Connecticut and people like these councils, the New England Fishery Management Council or the Atlantic State Marine Fisheries Committee, both of which advise NOAA, or National Oceanic and that runs the real regulations. But you're right. If we had a more informed citizenry that would respond and could say, yes, let's prioritize river herring conservation because it's so important, for our land-based whatever. Yeah, that's a great thing, Kurt. Julie. Yes, sir.
How about dog feces getting into the waterways that are polluting the waters everywhere nowadays?
How about the
Dog feces
dog feces?
is polluting a lot of the waters.
Yeah. I'm sure it is, but it's and we should clean up. We should and people should pick up their dog poop.
Especially around supply pond, you can't even walk down the trail because of dogs.
Here, here.
Well, it pollutes our water faces.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's a significant factor.
They filled packs of wolves getting into the dog feces. It's a real problem in this state. So,
I'll just mention that the Short Beach crew, with science,
Louder.
Shore Health District, etc., figured out that the major problem through beach closure in that neighborhood was dog feces, and there's been an educational campaign. The amount of pollution in that area has decreased by about 75%. Due to people just banding together, there's nothing wrong with dogs, it's just that, my wife and I have to do a better job picking up after them, that's all. So, it's not easy.
So Rich Shanahan, is Rich Shanahan here? Rich is in charge of the supply pond. He heads the committee that runs the supply pond. And he's a very responsible guy, and he could put up signs. Yes, ma'am.
In Short Beach, on this dog poop effort that we've done, and we've really made a difference in cleaning up the waters, we've hooked up with East Shore Health, and they're really taking it on with the idea of bringing it to other parts of the world. And so, that it could get extended out to the supply pond and stuff, and I'd be happy to mention it to Rich or to the East Shore about it.
That's a great idea. 75% just from cleaning up dog poop. That's huge. Wow. Yes, sir.
Yes, I have a question about the navigability of the Beach Brook and the other discount road. Just at times walking there, it seems either shallow or there's branches or there's rocks or whatever. It's hard to envision fish getting all the way up, even to the supply pond, much less Lindsay Pond. Is that an issue? Is that something that needs to be, do you have to try to clear the brooks at all?
I don't think so. I mean, I haven't, Gebhardt has never worried about that. Wood in the stream, in the water course, is, usually really healthy. I know for trout anyways, but I don't think that if the herring are not totally helpless. They just can't execute like a 12-foot jump, But they can probably go over like 3 inches, or they can find their way around. Or, there's a mass of them. So once one person goes through, then they all are, they have sensors on the sides and they communicate with their school. But it would be a big job, and I don't know whether ecologically it would be a good thing. I don't know, but I can ask, or we can find that out. I walked the full length of, certainly the brook between Lindsley Pond and Cedar Pond, and that was, in the wintertime, it was a misery. It was very dense, so it would be really hard to clean. Yes, sir.
Yes, I brought that up because if you're spending all this money on 2 fish ladders,
Yeah.
it's great. But but something in 5 years or 3 years down the road are gonna kill all that environment, especially the fish and polluted water. It really doesn't make sense.
No, you're right, you're right.
Okay? If you looked at Young's Pond lately, there's hundreds of dead fish in there. I'm not sure the cause, but it could be because of that. Just recently, like a couple days ago, there was hundreds of them dead.
Don't know. No, but that's, no, I think it's a great idea. If, you know, if you could get a statistic
Put
like,
signs up and pay a fine.
yeah.
You can't take care of your dog, you shouldn't have them, pick up the pieces. So I see this including everything.
Yeah. Well,
One question.
yes.
I don't, you probably already answered it, but the fish that come in that go up to spawn, do they die then, or do they go back out to sea?
The statistics are something like 60% of the ones that spawn will make it back out. So, you know, that's why, you know, a 7, 8-year-old fish is a pretty old fish if they spawn, you know, 3 or 4 times. Each female has like 200,000 eggs. I think they said for the supply ponds, you'd really need, you know, something like 40 spawners to max out the carrying capacity, you know, of the pond.
And years ago, I read a study that said if you clean a stream out of brush, you reduce the spawning because the water moves too quickly, so you can't really
Maybe.
clean out. It's not a good thing.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you very much for coming.